How would you assess the defense?
I think we're terrible. We're terrible until we get down. When we get down, that's when everybody want to play defense. But if we play from the beginning, we'll be the fucking best team. You know what I mean? Because we got the guys. Myself, Jaden, Rudy, Dante, Nikhil, Julius. Like all these motherfuckers can guard. We just gotta do it from the jump, from the beginning of the game. Like I don't know if we be tight or cold or what it is, because I have no excuse. I don't know why I don't play defense early in the game, but like I'm a part of it too. Like we gotta be better early. Like some jump ball, motherfucker, we finna lock y'all down. Like that's what we gotta get. Once we get there, we'll win some games.
I swear, nothing is more entertaining in the National Basketball Association than an Anthony Edwards unedited, completely raw, in the locker room post-game interview. I am just saying, and I have to say the appropriate word for it is absolutely priceless. That was Anthony Edwards being interviewed after the Timberwolves beat the Bulls by like 15. I have to ask you this question. Which young NBA superstars, you know, the ones that are seriously rising to the top of the mountain, how many of them would be as candid about the team's lack of defense, considering they actually just won a game by, as I mentioned, like 15 points against the Chicago Bulls in Chicago? Anthony Edwards is absolutely that rare player in the NBA. 135-119 was the actual final on Thursday night. I want to talk to you today about the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're now 5-3. We're going to talk about Anthony Edwards and where does this team go from here. That is the topic on the NBA Rundown today. New to the channel, where the hell have you been? Please go ahead and subscribe, and of course like this video. We have both an audio and a YouTube version of it. So in case you are watching this or hearing the audio, I will, of course, reference some video every once in a while. That being said, let's dive into Anthony Edwards. Now, we know that Anthony Edwards is one of the great young superstars in the NBA. We also know that Anthony Edwards is probably would be voted most likely to actually put his foot in his mouth with a particular comment that he might make. That being said, Anthony Edwards over the years has matured a little bit and I think actually does a really good job, especially in these post-game in-locker interviews, actually doing what a lot of people fail to do, both in the regular world as well as in the basketball world. And it's one of the things that I absolutely love about Anthony Edwards, but he is actually just honest. He is candid. He actually says what he thinks, and that certainly is a refreshing thing. I mean, how many times have we heard the interviews with the players who are simply just reading off of the NBA's handbook on how to handle members of the press? Apparently, that's something that Joel Embiid needs apparently a refresher for, if you know what I mean. That being said, Anthony Edwards at this point, from a statistical standpoint, is certainly having the best year of his career, at least through the first 8 games. He's averaging over 28 points. He's averaging nearly 6 rebounds. He's down a little bit on the assist front. That certainly can be attributed to the fact that they're still trying to find their way with Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo and his, if you will, his safety net, his safety blanket. Karl Anthony Towns, as you know, has moved on. Those assist numbers, I think, will certainly go up over time. But from a field goal percentage standpoint, he's shooting 48%, which is a career high. But what's really amazing is that Anthony Edwards from the three-point arc is actually shooting 46.1% through 8 games. What that actually tells you is that Anthony Edwards, as we know, played on the U.S. Olympic team, but that also means post-U.S. Olympics, Anthony Edwards certainly worked a lot on his three-point shot. You don't just go from 35% to 46% without actually putting the work in, which makes these post-game interviews with Anthony Edwards just highly entertaining because he's actually putting in the time and the effort. He's not just shooting from his mouth. He actually knows exactly what he's saying. Now, in terms of the Timberwolves' overall defense, through these first 8 games, they are currently ranked 13th when it comes to overall scoring from a defensive perspective, a ranking that last year they were between number 1 and 2 throughout the entire season. So certainly both the teams have figured out how to play the Timberwolves, as well as Anthony Edwards sort of pointed out, the team is still trying to figure things out. From an offensive perspective, the team is sitting in there around 12 and 11th ranked in the NBA. The real telling sign for this Timberwolf team over the next couple months will be if their defense actually improves. Now, right now, from a defensive perspective, the team is actually giving up almost 111 points a game. Now, if they can get that number down into the 105 points per game, which is where, surprisingly, the Dallas Mavericks actually sit right now in the 5th spot, they will be in a very good position as they enter sort of the backside of this upcoming season. I think it's still a little too early to tell exactly who won the New York Knicks Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo trade. I suspect that on some point, I think both teams are actually going to win from this. I suspect that the Minnesota Timberwolves, especially with Chris Finch, are going to figure out how to make this all work at a far more efficient manner, especially when you have players like Anthony Edwards that can actually self-evaluate and actually figure out what is wrong, actually admit when they actually do something not right. It is so refreshing from just a fan perspective to actually see a player like Anthony Edwards, and I'm going to use the H word now, actually be honest with you, North America. We know that it rarely happens in the world of sports. So if Anthony Edwards accidentally makes a mistake at some point over the next couple months and puts his foot in his mouth, which I'm sure he will do, cut him a little bit of slack, because he's one of few players, of a very few select players in the NBA that will actually be honest with you night in and night out. All right, I want to know what your thoughts are, North America, about Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Are currently in the 6th spot in the Western Conference. Yes, it's early, I know. Their upcoming schedule should allow them to actually move up from that. They've got the Portland Trailblazers tonight at home. Then they have Jimmy Butler, which will be always entertaining, and the Miami Heat on Sunday. That is then followed up by a road trip to play back-to-back games against the Portland Trailblazers. Then they go to Sacramento and they play the Kings. And then they come home on Sunday, November 17th for a game, which should be a highly anticipated game against Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns. I think the T-Wolves are about to go on a bit of a winning streak. Of course, compliments of Adam Silver and the NBA schedule. So I'd love to know what you think. Where do you think we're going to be with this Minnesota Timberwolves team in about 10 games? I think they'll probably be in the top 4 teams in the Western Conference, if not maybe a little bit better than that, assuming there are no major injuries. I did want to also point out that in last night's game in Chicago, Chicago native Terrence Shannon Jr., go ahead and look him up. You'll see some stories about Terrence Shannon Jr., some of it not so good. All of it has been proved to be just not true. That being said, he scored his first 4 points in the NBA, and he did it in just 2 minutes. It's amazing to me how many teams in the association are not doing what Steve Kerr and the Golden State Warriors are doing right now, which is shifting to a 12-player rotation. I think the Minnesota Timberwolves are one of those teams. Maybe they can't quite go 12 players night in and night out, but they're certainly deep enough to at least go 10 to 11 players night in and night out. And I would certainly love to see Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr., both of them rookies, actually get a little bit more playing time than they've been getting to this point. All right, that's it for today's NBA Rundown. Love to know what your thoughts are, North America. Thanks so much for tuning in. Our audio version of this podcast is starting to blow up, so thanks so much for all of your support. For the NBA Rundown, I am Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.
This is Phoenix.